Hello and welcome to Real Chat with Kat, the podcast dedicated to igniting your entrepreneurial spirit and empowering you to conquer new horizons. In this podcast, we chat with inspiring entrepreneurs on their journey to success through some amazingly insightful and expansive conversations. These episodes thrive on thought-provoking chats where our guests fearlessly explore their path to success, sharing their experiences, failures, and triumphs. No topic is off limits as we deep dive into the talked about and not so talked about pieces it takes to build a business, overcome limiting beliefs, deal with personal struggles, and everything in between that shapes our lives and our businesses. I'm your host, Kat Polsonelli, creator and founder at The Lotus Effect, where we believe that success is not just about strategies and tactics, it's about cultivating a powerful mindset and creating customized business operations that align with you and your true purpose. Whether it's mastering time management, improving productivity, enhancing leadership skills, or simply fostering a growth-oriented mindset, we'll provide you with the tools and strategies to flourish in both your business and personal life. I'm so excited to have you join us today in this episode, so get ready to feel empowered and inspired as we learn together and from one another on how to rise above challenges, break through limitations, and unlock our full potential. Let's dive in. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today on this episode of Real Chat with Kat. I'm so excited to have you all here with me today and my new guest. So, Matt, thank you so much for joining me today. It's great to have you.
Of course.
Thank you. And please do us all a favor. Tell us who you are, what it is that you do, and what got you into this space.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first and foremost, thank you so much for having me on as well. I'm certainly honored to be a part of it. And I've watched a lot of your stuff, and I mean, it is phenomenal. I mean, just your episodes, the way that you engage your people, and that you truly listen and you care about what the folks are saying. I love that. So wanted to commend you on that. And a little bit about myself. So my name is Matt Millia. I'm born and raised here in Cleveland, Ohio. And I started a virtual staffing agency that specializes in inside sales. And I started it because I always think back to when I was younger and looking at some of my family members that were entrepreneurs. My grandfather ran his own construction company. And, you know, of course, I always saw that when he had good people and he could build his business, I saw him a lot more. When he didn't have good people, I never saw him because he was doing the task of everybody. He was the owner that would get down in the dirt. He would, lay the bricks. He would, pour the concrete. He would paint the walls. He'd sweep the floors. There was no job that was beneath him. But having those good people and having people that you can build your business around really makes a world of difference. And that was what got me wanting to get into the virtual hiring space and helping people grow through having good people. And I believe that you're always one hire away from your biggest breakthrough.
I love that. And I love that you bring in the hardworking piece, right? I feel like that, and this may sound horrible to people out there, I almost feel like that's an old concept. We do see a lot of these younger generations, no offense to them, right? Because we raised them. But we do tend to see a lot of the younger generations that are a little bit more entitled, or they feel like other people owe them things. And while I don't believe that we need to go so far back in the past of the way that it was, I also believe that we need to find a balance in between the way that it is done now. And I love that you brought up that nothing was beneath him, right? I am that person that I don't care if you're the CEO of a company or the janitor, I'm going to smile and conversate. And I'm going to ask you how you're doing, all on the same level, because you deserve the same respect. And so I love that you brought that up. That's just that to me is something that I feel like we need to get more toward, and I feel like we've gotten
100%.
away from. But I love that you had entrepreneurs in your family. So I was the opposite. My family was always, in some type of corporate position or something like that. So the entrepreneurial space was like a whole nother world for me. So I'm curious to know, when you were kind of growing up and seeing that, did you already know that was the direction you kind of wanted to go, as you wanted to own your own business? Or were you like all the other kids that were like, I want to be a firefighter? I'm just
I,
curious.
I love that question. So you want to know something totally funny? I had a strange career trajectory. And so I don't think I've ever even told anyone this on a podcast. I wanted to be a repo man, which is so
Uh-oh.
weird. Don't ask me why. It was like I saw a movie and I was like, "Oh my God, that's so cool!" Like, and then I met some people that did it, and they're like, "You don't want this job," and I'm like, "No, no, maybe not." Found out you get shot at and all that. I'm like, "No, never mind."
Yeah.
I watched like Dog the Bounty Hunter and all those
Oh
shows. I'm like,
yeah,
"Oh,
no,
this
of
is really
course.
cool," and then yeah, but no, I mean, as far as so the funny thing is when I was in school, my teachers would always say, Matthew's extremely intelligent, but the challenge that Matthew has is he can't stay focused, he can't stay on task, and he'd rather talk the whole time. And
Oh, do I
so,
know that one?
yeah, so I realized I'm like, okay, school may not be, that's not where my that's not what I enjoy. It's not what I'm passionate about. And I'll never forget, we had this, they basically called it was a career day is what it was. And they had us take this test. And it
Hmm.
was probably one of the only tests I can think back of in school that I actually enjoyed taking. And so they would ask you all these different questions. What would you do with this? And I'm telling you, I took this test so many different times and different variations over the years. Every single one of them said, you should be an entrepreneur. You should be an entrepreneur. And
What?
it's crazy. And then knowing that like my grandfather, watching, he was successful. But he worked a lot. He worked super hard,
Yeah.
and he was always, and like I said, if he had good people, he was home more. If he had terrible people, you never saw him. So we
Yeah.
always knew when the workforce was good because he had the right people and he was able to optimize and build his day around those people, and he built his business around those people. And for me, I mean, just looking back, the being an entrepreneur, I knew that I didn't like school. So I have a little bit of college under my belt, but it wasn't what I was passionate about. And then I got into doing loans as a loan officer. And I just, I watched a few people just really hit it big before this whole subprime meltdown happened, and watching them do loans. And I'm like, I could do this. And I did. And then I got out very quick, but learned a lot of lessons along the way.
I feel like that is like your whole childhood. Like I've been telling my teenager that right now, like my 19-year-old, he's going to kick my butt if I keep calling him a teenager. But he's a kid to me. But I keep telling him the same thing, because I'm like, you don't have, like, I know you want to have it figured out. And we think because of our small little world at that time, like we have it all figured out, but
Oh
boy, do
yeah.
you have some learning and some lessons to do. But I think it's funny that you bring up, that school wasn't really your thing because one, I always got in trouble for talking, always, but I was the person that got bored because I could learn everything so quickly that I didn't have anything else
Right.
to do. My oldest one he was kind of in between. He was a talker. He had a very hard
Mhm.
time sitting still, and he was only really good with the things that he actually enjoyed doing. Right. Which
Yeah.
was interesting because the way that I grew up, it was, you went to school, you went to college, and you got a degree, and then that was your job. By the way,
Right.
my degree is in medical administration, and I no longer use it. So I always, so it's interesting, like raising my kids, because now being an entrepreneur and seeing this different side of everything, that is how I teach my kids as well. Like, hold on college. Like if you know that there's something you're passionate about and you want to do, great, like go for it. But like for my son, right, school's never really been his thing. Like he could if he really wanted to, he just didn't care, right? But he's very mechanically inclined. So like working on things and tinkering is like, that's where his focus is at. And I feel like we're starting to see a shift in people in the world now as well that are realizing that getting from high school to college to get a degree, you honestly, for most people, have no freaking clue what you really want to do when you grow up. Hell, I don't know what I want to do when I grow up, right? Like I tell people tons of different things. I have so many ideas, but we weren't taught that, I feel like, for the longest time. And now we're starting to see like this progression of people like taking their time to figure it out, which in my opinion, I think that that's a good thing versus, kind of how you and I were, which is you do this, you do that, and you go with this, right? And then like you get so burnt out and then you get stuck. And especially if you have a family right now, you can't make decisions. You don't know which way to go. Like I want my kids to be able to have that freedom of like bouncing and kind of figuring out what they enjoy versus, you know, waiting so much later in life. So I would love to know, you know, with the people that you bring in to help, are you starting to see that in your business, that you are finding VAs and appointment setters and people that do this, that like, that's what they actually really enjoy doing. And therefore it's collaborating with your clients in a much more synchronicity kind of way?
I love that question because earlier today, so I have a girl that's been an admin of mine for 6 years. I mean, so, and a lot of my people, and this is one of the rare things for me, I treat them like family. I bring them in, I do everything I can to compensate well, take care of them, make sure that there's a good culture for them to learn. And one of the biggest things that I've learned just through some mentors is I train them so well that they could start their own thing and they could leave, but I treat them so good that they don't want to. And I will say that in a lot of scenarios and situations with different people that I've come to interact with over the years, the folks that I bring in, whether they're in, so I'll give you an example in the sales space, an inside sales rep, the one reason why they don't go and be a total 100% commission based only representative is because a lot of them do have families or people to support. And so for them, they want that little bit of extra security, knowing that if I don't sell, I can still eat, and
Yeah.
they may not be eating lobster and steak, but they can at least put food on their table.
Yeah.
And that to me is so important. And the conversation I had with my admin earlier, she's worked with me for so long, but she plays everything very close to the chest. So I don't know what her personal life is like. So I asked her, I said, listen, you've been working with me for 6 years. What's your living situation like? Do you have a significant other? I know she has pets. I go, what is it? And because I asked these questions because I wanted to know what drives her, what motivates her, what can I do to be a more effective leader to help her look forward to coming into work every single
Yeah.
day. So for all intents and purposes, though, to go back to your question, do these people know they wanted that? A lot of them knew that they wanted to help people in the, whether it's the real estate space, the coaching space, they know that they want to get involved and they want to learn it. They just don't know where to start and begin. So I train them up, we coach them, we manage them, and then we either place them in someone's business or, of course, or they work for me. So that's how it all works. Hopefully that makes
Yeah.
sense. Hopefully I answered the question too.
Yeah. That makes sense. And I love that there's a key point that you made there when you were talking about how you were talking to your admin. You said, as being a leader, when I speak to her, you didn't say being her boss.
Yes.
I love that you made that distinction, because so many times you find people that we're still stuck in that boss mentality. And really, when you are stepping into another space of helping people, there isn't a boss mentality. Boss mentality, in my opinion, comes with an ego attachment. Leadership means that you want others to do well in whatever that looks like for them. And I feel like, again, that comes back to what I'm starting to see more with people now is, the traditional hours and the traditional, you get healthcare coverage and the traditional, you get a 401k. Like for a lot of people, that doesn't matter. There are other things that matter more to them, right? That's going to benefit them in their lives versus the way that you think that they should think it should benefit them. So I love that you took the time to ask that question for them. FYI, I hope everybody's taking notes on that one. But it's so important, because if you don't know what is driving the other person and you aren't constantly having conversations, you're going to lose that connection. And in my personal opinion, and this is one of the hard things that I dealt with in the medical field, and I'm not bashing anybody because there's a lot of great doctors, but most of the companies that I worked were, and in the other places that I talked with other pieces who are nurses or admins or those that really run the business, are not being treated like they run the business. They're being treated as if they're replaceable. And it's, in my opinion, not fair when we think that way, because in order for you to live the dream that you want, whether that's a doctor, entrepreneur, whatever, you have a team of people that are helping you keep that sustainable. So therefore, they're just as important, if not more important, when it comes to delegating in your business and having conversations versus treating them like they're beneath you.
They are more important, by the way. I just wanted to throw, and that's my opinion, but I'm saying that because for me, I want to surround myself with people who are actually more intelligent than I am. If I am the smartest person in the room, I have done a very poor job of putting the right people in that room. And that's how I look at it. And all of them, I have them operate as if they're their own business owner of the segment of their business. So it gives them autonomy, so they feel free to move about. They don't feel like I'm micromanaging. And yeah, I'm sorry, you sparked something in there.
No, I love it. Keep going.
Well, I think that that's so important though, because especially now more than ever, a lot of these guys. So even my right hand in command, at one point he said, hey, I want to be my own entrepreneur. I want to do this. I want to do that. So we literally sat down and walked through what it would look like, what he needs to save, where he needs to go, what he needs to have. And because ultimately, I think so many people we operate in a scarcity mentality. We're afraid we're going to lose these people.
Yeah.
But if you lose them, why not lose them and leave them better off? And instead of losing them, stay with them, stay connected to them. I mean, I can't tell you how many past employees and people I have that still reach out to this day and are like, oh, hey, I found this person. They might, they need calling services, or, hey, I found this. They need marketing services. Maybe you can help or point them in the right direction. I mean, there's so many times that I have past they're called third-party contractors, but employees, so to speak, that would be referring off business. But I want these guys to feel as if they're a part of a team. I think that's the most important thing, and that each person of that team has an integral role. And if I hired them for something, I'm probably familiar with it, but I'm not an expert at it like they are.
Well, and I love that, because you're playing to other people's zones of genius, right? Which is something that I preach about on this podcast a lot, is realizing that you are going to get to a point in your business where you don't need to know how to do it all, because you're going to be completely burnt out. So why not bring people in who are experts in it, that, to be honest, they enjoy that part of it, so that you can focus on more of the pieces that you enjoy, right? And you brought another good point too, when you said that leaving people in a better place than, where you started with them. That, in my opinion, is understanding that they are human just like we are. And we all go through seasons, right? And so there may be one season of their life where they're great in the role that they are in. There may be something else that happens, such as starting a family, having to move in family members, right? Starting to retire, where that season shifts. And guess what? Their priority isn't the same as it was when they first started working with you. And we forget that, because we just expect people to be there for us, right? Instead of realizing that, like, we've gone through our own seasons, we've gone through our own changes, and we need to be okay with, like, okay, so this isn't what you want to do anymore. Okay, great. So then what can I help you to build you up? And to be honest, in my personal opinion, what you focus on expands. So the more that you're helping other people, the more you're focusing on that openness. And like you said, instead of that scarcity, you're going to be bringing in more people like that into your life anyway. And the doors are going to open, and someone is going to find you in some way, shape, or form in the way that you need them to, without you having to put so much effort into hoping you can find the right person.
So true. Yeah. And that to me too is all about, again, bringing these people in and training them up so good that if they do leave, they have something to fall back on. And for me to just take myself out of the equation and remove the pride factor of saying, well, they're going to work for me for the rest of their life. Well, that's probably not reasonable. Now, again, I do provide a lot of opportunities. I provide a great wage. I give them great benefits. But at the end of the day, it's all about them. What are they passionate about? What is it that's driving them? And do they feel like they're a good part of the organization to keep driving it forward? And they feel like they're valuable and that they're being valued. It's just, it all ties together.
Yeah, I love that. It has to be it needs to be a win-win situation, right?
100%.
But I love the pride. The pride gets in the way a lot. The ego gets in the way a lot. And I do think that a lot of times that comes from that old mentality, right? Where
Right.
you do as you're told, not right. And we see that so much in the corporate world that I see a lot of people that bring that into the entrepreneurial space because they don't know any different. And it, to me, it's such a hard spot to be in, and people wonder why
So,
they're stuck where
and
they're at.
I've never used the word boss. I hate it. I just like, it's such a negative connotation. I'm the team leader. And that's how I look at it, because I mean, we are all a team. And I mean, if one of those people leave, I've told those people this before. I go, hey, if you're out of here, our company's gonna be in lots of trouble. That's how much I build systems and things around so that if one person does leave, someone is the next person up. But that's why I'm always constantly bringing in and really getting people prepared, getting the talent, grooming them for that next role, that next position that they need to go into, so
Mm-hmm.
that I'm not stuck and I'm not held captive. And that's really why the biggest thing with sales reps, that why I do what I do, because of the fact that you bring someone in and generally it's ego that gets in the way. They think they're the world's greatest salesperson, so they become entitled, they become lazy, they take vacations, and they decide not to do any work for a little while. I mean, I've seen it all in this space, but the point being is, like, if you get these guys to a point where they always, like, they feel like they have a good environment, but at the same time, there's metrics, there's numbers, there's
Mm-hmm.
expectations, and it's not an expectation, it's an actual agreement between all parties. If they don't hit those numbers, well, then I'm sorry, we're going to coach you up or we're going to coach you out. And if they get coached out, then they get coached out. Then it's that next person that comes in, and we've been training them up and preparing them for that role. So, anyways, I
Mm-hmm.
know I went off into a tangent, but I
No.
wanted to share that because I think it's so vital that people understand that you constantly have to be training not only replacements within the organization, but you're replacing yourself as well, because you
Yeah.
need that person that can step in when you're in a different season of life.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I love that you say coach up or coach out, right? Because so many times we tend to act as if it's our fault or our responsibility. And it still has to be a 50-50, right? Like I can only do so much,
Right.
but then you need to put your worth in as well, right? And being able to be open to understand, like, one, is this a pattern, or is this something that's brand new? And if it's something that's brand new, do we need to have a conversation about it? Is there something else going on that we're not aware of, before you just decide that, like, oh, they don't work for me, so I don't have time for them, and you let them go, right? We see that
Right.
happen in the corporate space so much. And I think that's why we're starting to see so many people trying to find remote work and outside jobs or be an entrepreneur. At the same time, like you were saying in the beginning, there are still a lot of people that the entrepreneurial space doesn't necessarily work for them. They would prefer to have that little bit of safety net, and to each his own, right? The entrepreneurial space is not for everybody. And we as entrepreneurs need to understand that for those people that want to have a little bit more of a safety net, we need to be having conversations with them, and we need to be open and vulnerable and honest as well, so that we know what's going on with them, they know what's going on with us, and it's a mutual understanding, versus one person feeling very one-sided, or like somebody came at them, or they're like, I don't understand what happened, right? Like, I really feel like there needs to be a relationship developed in order for it to work.
So true. And I always tell everybody, I mean, everything in this business is relationships. I mean, it really is. And that's why I treat everyone in that relationship the same way you would treat, a personal relationship, a business relationship. Like, they're all relationships. And that's why I always say you're one hire away from greatness, because if you get that one person, and even for me, for example, so I'm pretty good at marketing, but I don't like doing it. I like, if I do a landing page, I have to take a nap. I mean, it literally exhausts me. Don't ask me why. I'm just like, oh God, I'm burned. I don't even want to do this anymore. Put me in a sales call, or put me like in a situation like this, or put me in a area to train somebody. I love that. It gives me energy. But there are
Mm-hmm.
certain things that just drain you, and so you have someone else that can help do that. And when I put the other person in, they came up with all kinds of stuff. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, it just helped explode other businesses around us
Yeah.
because they came up with these amazing strategies that I would have never thought of on my own.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think that's the other thing of letting go of that ego too, is knowing that even if you are a leader, which in my opinion, again, like we said, very different than a boss, a leader
Right.
is open to other people's ideas. I'm not meant to have all of the great ideas and everything. So if I'm having conversations with my team or the people around me, that's when you start to get inside of things you never would have thought of before, right? Versus thinking that, you've got it all figured out and, we're going to do it this way kind of a thing. But I have to ask you, because this to me has always been interesting. So I'm curious to know,
Mm-hmm.
because I know that the sales setting and things like that is kind of your specialty. I know you do some of the other things too. Have you ever heard of reasons why people want to be in that kind of a position?
Oh yeah, it's a great question. So a lot of times people want to be in that position. So I'll give you a great example for us. So one of the hopefully this ages well. One of the programs and the products that we offer is, and I don't do this in the real estate space. This is like solely in the high ticket space. So coaches, consultants, course creators.
Okay.
What we'll offer is we will put our entire team into their business. My admins, I'll put an appointment setter, and I'll put a high ticket closer in there. We guarantee that in 120 days or less, they'll double their money. And if they don't, we just work with them for free until they do. So why I'm shamelessly putting that plug in there, there's a reason why I'm saying this. It's because I have to have the perfect avatar, meaning the perfect person. Like there's a specific persona that has to go through what we call the litmus test as we bring them in. And if they don't fit that, so meaning this person has to want to sell because they don't want to be capped on their income. That is
Mm-hmm.
why someone wants to sell. They don't want to have a cap on their income. If someone's like, "Oh, hey, we'll give you $50,000 a year and you're going to be a sales rep." Okay. What else? Oh, yeah, you'll get health benefits. Okay, is there any commission? No. Well, okay, I mean, $50,000 a year, basing that off of like the average household income in the US is good. I mean, it's what average
Mm-hmm.
household income is, but that person doesn't want that life. They want to be able to make the six figures and above and beyond. They want to have that ability that they can, get on the phone, close people down, and get paid in direct proportion to what they sell. We call it kill what you eat or you kill.
Yeah.
I'm like, wait a minute, that made no sense. But yeah, the point is like they want to be able to, if they take down a big sale, they want to be able to get compensated for it. So I think that's the most important thing. And especially even for us, like if someone doesn't have that mentality, I won't even bring them on, especially if we're doing sales. Virtual assistants
Mm-hmm.
is different, and
Yeah.
like you said before, we do other things. We also offer virtual assistants, and virtual assistants, we generally find people lower skill level, lower income, demographic. They don't necessarily need to make as much. They just want stability. But that person that wants more and is going to be a good fit for that position, they're going to tell me, well, I don't want to just make a base pay. And I'm like, okay, you already got my attention. So yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Because I know, like, for me, I've done sales in the past, and there were parts of it that I enjoyed, right? However, I was always the person that, like, I could only sell it if I wholeheartedly believed in what it was I was selling, right? So like I couldn't just go out and just sell whatever to anybody. I had to believe it, and that's how I dealt with people. So I was just curious of the mentality that's behind that. But I love that you have a system that you take people through before you put them in that position, because sales calls and doing that piece, like that's a whole nother level of of intelligence, of understanding, of facilitating, dealing with, like, it's just the mentality is very different than if you're an entrepreneur that's selling your coaching product or selling your service based, right? It's very different. So it's always been kind of a thing to me of like, how do you find people that actually want to be in sales? But that makes perfect sense.
I usually look too for people that were either they owned their own thing at one point or they were in like a sales role before that was similar to that. And we actually like we have an entire so we basically built out a university. Like I have an entire training course, a platform, a program I've just launched this on like a larger scale, and eventually I'm going to actually have it be where people be in it, and they'll pay a small amount, but then we'll guarantee them that they'll get work, and to actually be a high ticket closer for someone else. Because one of the things that we look for is we have different levels to everything that we do. We'll either help them from the ground floor, meaning they get an admin from us, they get an appointment setter, they get a closer, and then we'll also help them with running their ads and generating business organically and paid traffic. And so there's just so many different elements to that. But if you don't have that right person, you don't have that training and that system, because you're so right. I mean, an appointment setter is, you get on the phone and be like, oh, hey, you saw our product. Do you want to know more information?
Yeah.
And like, then you have to put it on the other person to actually sell the product. And it's not to diminish the job of an appointment center, because there's some definite challenges. I mean, my company's appointments today, there's challenges as to being an appointment person, but being that salesperson that closes the deal down. As the entrepreneur, it allows you to breathe easy, thinking, well, I actually have a whole sales team that does all this stuff for me. So the entrepreneur can actually take a vacation, leave the business for a short period of time, and have a life. So yes, I don't even know what you asked me, but we got off on, but like the avatar, the right person for that position. But there's characteristics they all have to have. And if they don't have them, could be really bad.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. Now I have to ask you too, because I love bringing this up, and this only gets brought up every once in a while. For people that are looking at bringing someone in on their team or creating a team, what would be like the top 2 or 3 things that you would say they need to have in place before they make this decision?
Love that. That's a great question. I think the first thing they have to have, no matter what, is standard operating procedures. There has to be an SOP where they have it set up in a way that, okay, this is what this person does, this is how it's done, and this is the procedure for it. It has to be recorded, number one, and it has to be all outlined. The other big thing that they're going to also need is, in a lot of cases, so I'll just give an example. The most recent position that we filled was a transaction coordinator. And so in real estate, even though I'm a real estate agent, transaction coordination is my weakest. Like, it's one of the things, because again, for me, it's like, I don't like the nitty gritty paperwork, and I'm like,
I was a TC for a long time and I loved it, but
okay. So I delegate
medical administration, right? I mean,
I get it. I delegate that off. So what I always tell people is, well, you have to be able to, as the owner, you have to be able to train to your knowledge and give some foundation. If you have zero foundation, that's not a problem. Find someone that specializes in what you're weak in and has great, reviews, has great backing. And before you put those positions in, there just has to be some sort of a training program. And then there has to be, the last thing is an agreement and expectations. And let me take that back. Not expectations. I'm sorry. It has to be an agreement that has what the expectations are. So that way all parties agree to it. And you're managing an agreement. You're not managing some unsaid expectations, because that's generally how people end up getting in that hire fire cycle. They have these expectations, they don't get met, they fire them, but they don't tell them what they are. And that kills the business.
Yeah. And I totally agree with you on that too. I mean, SOPs, or standard operating procedures, is a huge one. And I think a lot of people get so overwhelmed in their business. They're like, I just need an admin. And it's like, okay, but what do you need an admin for? Right. Like that's a service that I offer with my clients, is if you're looking to bring in a team member, what are you looking to delegating? And then how can we section that out? What is that going to look like? What is going to be their role? What is everything going to be broke down to? And then what resources can we put together? Even if it's a Google Doc with a bunch of Loom videos, right? I don't care. Something that just gives them a heads up, like, hey, this is how you do it when you're doing this. If you're going to run my emails, this is how you do it when you're doing this, right? Something that gives them something to go off of, versus what I do see a lot of people doing is they bring people in, it's a total freaking wreck. Then the VA or the admin doesn't have a clue what to do, or they're not in a position to say, hey, your crap sucks. Let me do this, right? And so they try to shimmy along with this other person who just wants them to take it off their plate, but because they're getting asked tons of questions and nothing's getting done, it's now that person's fault. And it's like, no, you didn't properly set your person up to have the opportunity to be able to do something like that in your business. So I agree with you 1000% on that one.
I have so many stories on that, and I won't go into all of them because we only have so much time. But oh yes, I mean, I can't tell you how many times someone would bring someone in and then they didn't have an agreement. They didn't know what exactly it was they wanted them to do. They're like, oh, well, you could do some of this and a little of this and a little of that. And it's like, well, they need to have a daily rhythm and routine, because if they try to do 10 things at a level 10, it's not going to happen. But if they do two or three things, they can do it at top level 10. They can bring their very best version of themselves to the table, where if you have them trying to do all this different stuff and then all of a sudden, oh, you did this wrong, and then it becomes toxic.
Yeah. And I agree with you. I think having the agreement is a really good piece in that structure as well, because it does set those expectations. And I think if you run your business this way, I think that it gives both sides the opportunity to sit down and say, hey, I feel like we're going outside of these lines, or, things aren't being met. And I do believe that should be on both sides, because I know as a business owner, right, we get busy, and it's easy when you've got someone that works really good to be like, hey, could you just handle this too? But then if it becomes a repeating issue and that's not on what you two had agreed with, I do feel like that you should be having moments where you two are having conversations, and your employee or your 1099 contractor can come in and say, hey, I noticed that I've been doing this role, and you've added a couple of things repetitively, right? Like, I'd like to have a conversation to see if this is something I'm going to continue with. And I think that should be an open-ended conversations on both sides, because things change, people's needs change, whatever the case may be. But there needs to be a space where both sides can come in and have that conversation, because things can change, right? We just add to it. We mark stuff up. Okay, cool. You don't like doing that? Well, fine. Then I can handle that. That's fine. But then I would like for you to do this, right? I feel like you can always go back and change, and you can add stuff to it. But I do think that it's very smart to have clear and concise boundaries.
100%. You have to.
I love that. So before we end on everything, which to me, I love this space. And I think this is like, the next level of people starting their business, but I don't think that people understand what that next level looks like. So I appreciate you coming on and filling us in on all the things, because it's so much great information. The one thing that I always ask all of my guests before we end is if you happen to have a quote or a piece of advice you would like to leave the audience with.
Yeah, I've said it a couple times, so I'm glad you asked. That's great. I believe that you're always one hire away from greatness. And for myself personally, what that meant, even for me as I was growing, I always had the mentality that I can do it all myself, that I could do it better than anybody else, and that I didn't need to delegate it off. And what I found very, very quickly was that was so far from the case. So and there are people, everyone thinks that they're not replaceable, but you 100% are replaceable. And I think the most important thing is understanding that if you hire the right person, it's going to be absolutely a game changer in your business. And that's why I always feel like you should do the couple things that you're amazing at, and the rest of the things, delegate them off. And even if you are amazing at it, still delegate it off to others, because then you can grow your amount of amazing. So that's the advice I leave.
I love that. No, it makes so much sense. So thank you so much for sharing that, Matt. And then of course, tell everybody, how can they find you? How can they connect with you? How can they be in your world?
Yeah, so the best way is to go to our main website. It's appointmentstoday.net, and book a call with myself or a member of my team. Whatever you need within your business, staffing related, or any questions that you have, or you just want to connect, I'd love to chat. And thank you so much for the opportunity again to come on and share some of the some of the experience that I have in the field. I appreciate it so much.
Yeah, of course, Matt. Thank you so much. And to everybody else out there, I mean, of course, we'll have all this information in the show notes. And I've talked with Matt several times, even way before the podcast episode. So we had great conversations. He was great at answering all of my questions. So I can't thank you enough, Matt, again, for being a part of the podcast. So thank you. And to everybody else that's out there, I hope you guys were taking notes. And if you're in the space of thinking about delegating and adding into your business, think about what we talked about today and make sure you've got some things in place. And if not, give one of us a call. Let's see who can help you so you can scale your business and live the dream that you want. So thank you for being a part of the podcast today. And until next time, don't forget, do one thing positive for someone each and every day and see the difference that it makes in your life. So until next time, have a fantastic day. Hello again, and thank you so much for being a part of the podcast today. If you enjoyed this episode and it brought tons of value, we ask that you please share, like, and subscribe. Your support means the world to us and helps us to reach even more inspiring entrepreneurs who can benefit from these powerful conversations. If you haven't already, be sure to leave a review on your favorite podcast platform, as this feedback is an amazing gift that fuels our growth and helps us to continually improve this podcast. Looking for an extra dose of inspiration and empowerment? Then be sure to connect with me on social media. You can find me at The Lotus Effect, where I share valuable resources and tips while sharing my own journey of being an entrepreneur. And if you're interested in learning more about my coaching programs and services, be sure to check out my website at the-lotus-effect.com. Once again, thank you so much for being a part of Real Chat with Kat. Your presence and support makes all the difference. Remember, whether you find yourself in the depths of the mud or on the path of growth, we all have a unique journey. And just like the lotus, some of us start in the dirtiest of mud, yet as we rise and grow, we blossom into something beautiful, unique, and truly one of a kind. To all of my visionaries out there, keep rising and growing as you create your own Lotus Effect.